Welcome to CEO Interviews, a production of Gorecom, in which we take time to speak with small cap executives to see what's going on with their companies. And there's a lot going on with PyroGenesis. As you can see, we got Peter Pascali on. He's President CEO PyroGenesis Canada. Trades on both the TSX Big Board and the NASDAQ under the stock symbol PYR. Now, we do know that we've grown the investor base of PyroGenesis immensely over the past 12 months. So we're using this opportunity as a corporate update to go over some of the most important initiatives and even explain the genesis of those corporate initiatives, especially for the benefit of new shareholders at home who really want to get up to speed with the company. Highlights that you need to know about: Q1 revenue was $6.3 million, a 771% increase. Net earnings, comprehensive income, 3.7 mil. That's an increase of $5.5 million. Can't even put a percentage on that. It's a $5.5 million swing. Gross profit, 2.14 mil. That's up 700%, and a backlog of signed contracts at $26 million. Peter, let's talk about all these great initiatives. Welcome back. Great to see you.
Thanks, George. I miss the gang. Miss you all. I've been a little busy these days, as you'll see with this update. But it's good to be back. It's good to be here.
For everybody at home, want to be clear about something. We're not going to be disclosing anything new, no material news of any kind, but what we are going to do is provide good overview and corporate update of each of the initiatives the company's got going. There are many of them. We're going to start off with Dross, and specifically on June 7th, Peter, you announced that you received an LOI for 3 10-ton Dross systems. Try saying that really fast.
Yeah.
Before we talk about that, because we have so many new people, quick summary: what is Dross? And then what is your product, Dross?
So Dross is a byproduct of the aluminum smelter industry. And when the aluminum comes off the smelter, it comes in contact with oxygen and it forms a dross, which is like a sponge, and it sucks up all the valuable aluminum. And they don't like it, so they scoop it off and put it to the side. But there's valuable aluminum in it. And so what they do is they send it off to third parties to recover that valuable metal. Why does it go off to third parties? Simply, they usually use salt, and salt cannot come in contact with the smelter, so it has to go, or it'll contaminate the whole batch, so it goes off site. So what we do, George, as most people know, we use a process that does not use salt. So there's a lot of benefits. You can be on site, you can do it cheaper, you can do it faster. There's a higher metal recovery, et cetera, et cetera. So that was our basic offering. And what's very interesting is the presence we're having, not just with Dross, but in the aluminum industry in general. And let me be more specific. So we've done a great job with the Dross offering itself. We won, our technology won a huge contract for, I think, the largest one that was ever put out to bid, for 7 systems for $20 million. You can go look at some of the press releases and get some more details on that in the past. What's very interesting is we've identified both downstream opportunities and upstream opportunities. What do I mean by that? Because we're inside the fence, we call it the golden ticket now, and we're seeing what's happening. We see that how they're handling the residues that come off of handling Dross can be handled with a different process that creates a lot more value with the end product. So these residues are coming off the process, and they're either going to a landfill or being used sold as a cheap additive in the cement industry. Right now, in many parts of the world, even though it's a clean residue, they don't want it in the landfills. So there's a question of what to do with this residue. So we found the process, which we are hopefully going to conclude shortly, where, and it's separate from Dross, It's a separate new process. It's an add-on that will take these residues and make them into high valuable chemical products like an aluminum and ammonium sulfate. So we're tying up that end, which makes the Dross offering even more powerful. But being inside the fence, we're also looking upstream. And we've identified a couple of places where we could use our plasma technology and make it cheaper and lower greenhouse gases. So you see, we're doing.
Do you got specifics what those opportunities are?
Well, I'm not going to talk about them specifically.
Okay.
But they're high value opportunities. So what's key is that what I said was we make it cheaper and greenhouse gas reducing. And I'll come to that in a moment again. So what we're doing is we're tying up the upstream, Dross rate, and downstream, and totally separate. We announced in a press release that we have a relationship with Alouette and the Canadian government also financed it a bit to look at repurposing the residues that come off of spent pot liners. These residues go to landfill.
What?
Spent pot liners. So residues from spent pot liners are traditionally sent to landfill. And this is a huge problem that's been plaguing the industry. And we think we've come up with a solution where we can repurpose that into a valuable product. So these are all, if you're looking at what I've been talking about here, what's taking form is a significant presence in the aluminum industry in helping a very conservative industry address their greenhouse gas issues, their environmental issues, by repurposing residues or lowering greenhouse gases or both. And it's becoming a very significant part of our business.
And how big of an impact do you think you're going to be able to make, Peter, on the greenhouse gases side?
So when it comes to the Dross rate and the downstream processing of residues and the upstream, I think it's very significant because we can do things cheaper. Now, I've coined it, what I've said is at PyroGenesis, we're making sustainability sustainable. And what do I mean by that? I think it's unreasonable to ask companies to do something more expensive to meet their greenhouse gas emissions or their environmental mandates. Because I think in the world we have enough intellectual ability, we're smart enough to be able to provide or try to provide these companies with something cheaper. Like your legacy technology is this, it costs this. You're damaging the environment. Let me give you something that not only does not damage the environment, but is cheaper. It's better to use our technology, these technologies. So I think if we take the attitude that the goal here is, yes, is to reduce greenhouse gases, but it's also to make it cheaper to the end user. When you have both of those take place at the same time, it's a win-win. And that's what we're doing at PyroGenesis. We're trying to get rid of that reluctance that companies have to adopt more expensive technologies, although they do want to reduce their greenhouse gases and be environmentally friendly. But it's difficult. You're trying to run a company, you're trying to make money, and all of a sudden they're faced with more expensive processes. Well, at PyroGenesis, we don't. Like the upstream solutions we have in the processing of Dross, it lowers their costs. They should do it anyways. And that's why I say that's how we make sustainability sustainable, is we make it cheaper. All right, and that's the key here. At PyroGenesis, we seem to be nailing this.
Is that the basis for this LOI that's going to be?
Okay, so the LOI. So sorry, that was the question.
$10 to $15 million.
So I got away from that. You're right.
No, but the passion's great because we understand the core of what Pyro's trying to achieve.
So the LOI is happy. I mean, it's a nice number. It's important, but I get very excited about everything that we're doing there just coming to fruition. It's taking
clearly.
form. But why do we press release an LOI? Letters of intent, can be written on the back of a napkin on a plane in a conversation. They don't really mean anything. So we don't press release. I can't remember if we ever press released a previous LOI. Why it's important is because, and I thought it was material, is it comes from an existing client who obviously has familiarity with our systems and is obviously expanding. So they're expanding. They've given us an LOI, signaling their intent to buy Dross systems for their expansion. And I gave the number, it's 3 times 10 tons. 3 times 10 tons.
3 10-ton systems in the $10 to $15 million range.
And that depends on how they configure it and what changes they want and what they're going to. So that's why the range is there. Why is an LOI important? Because and why do we announce an LOI, and why do they go to an LOI? Well, basically, I mean, if you know what's happening in the world, there's all sorts of issues taking place with supply chains, as you know, shipping, supply chains. So it's prudent if somebody's going to do something, if they're smart, they're going to tell us basically, hey, PyroGenesis, this is what's taking place. This is what you can look forward to. Here's a letter of intent to give you some comfort, so you can go to your suppliers and put them on notice, because the more notice you give to suppliers, the better it is. Hopefully we can mitigate some of the supply chain issues, not with the supply chain issues, especially with respect to shipping. Shipping is a big problem these days, a big problem. So across the world, I mean, that's not news. So it's a prudent thing that somebody may give us an LOI and say, hey, this is our intent, this is what we're looking forward to. There's no guarantee. I mean, things can change, but it's an existing client who intends to expand, who has given us an LOI, and that speaks to the technology. That's what's important.
And I know things can change, Peter, but really at the end of the day, it's an existing client. If they're coming back, it means they're very happy with what they got the first time around.
Yeah.
Am I too optimistic in saying it's highly unlikely that this LOI is going to fail?
Well, look, what's material is it speaks to their intention, given their growth plans. Do their growth plans change because of something? I don't think so. The industry seems to be growing, and I don't know whether it's optimistic or not optimistic, but it's not in the bag, right? But what it clearly indicates is, again, Dross technology is very quickly taking hold in the industry, with existing clients wanting to order more, and when they expand. So you can imagine all the other people who are first time having conversations with us for the first time are also very excited.
And as I want, that's actually want to finish off with that. It's the last but maybe most important question for me, which is the rest of the industry now starting to find out? Are you comfortable that the global aluminum industry is finding out about your Dross solution?
Yes.
And is that why you're so passionate about being able to sustain sustainability, because you know you can deliver this to the whole world?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, when you're delivering to some of the most discerning clients and they reorder, it's very exciting. Very exciting.
Let's move on to your iron ore pelletization initiative. And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. The headline that spurs this is your June 3rd announcement. PyroGenesis announces request for cost estimate.
Yeah.
Major iron ore producer for 36 plasma torches. Before we get into that, let's do the same thing we did with Dross, which is what's going on in the iron ore world, specifically iron ore pelletization, that they now are taking such a strong look at PyroGenesis. And this again is for the benefit of new investors who may not fully understand that, but it's a quick summary there.
So iron ore pelletization is a process where they concentrate the iron ore at the source before transporting it, and they use diesel burners to do it. The diesel burners are fossil fuel burners. They're damaging to the environment. Now, it's not just the iron ore pelletization industry that uses diesel burners. You have the cement industry, the glass industry, automotive industry, a number of industries that do that, and they're all under pressure from environmentalists to address this greenhouse gas damaging process, environmentally damaging process. Well, the reason why iron ore pelletization is interesting is because we have a patent there to replace diesel burners with plasma torches. Plasma torches don't operate on diesel. They're very clean, so they do not have a greenhouse gas effect. I don't know, they do. They don't have. It's negative. I mean, we don't damage the environment. We don't produce greenhouse gases. So the question has always been, can you replace the diesel burner with a plasma torch? And the answer is yes, you can. Up to now, it looks like it's extremely beneficial. It's a plug and play. You just take out the diesel burner, you replace it with a plasma torch, a few adjustments. It seems to be, you don't have to shut down the furnace. That's very important to do this. You just have to replace, you can replace the diesel burner while the furnace is running, so there's no loss of revenues. And it seems like it's economical to do.
And this is, by the way, a massive industry, and it's a massive problem, right, Peter? You're talking about iron ore. So what you're talking about is the biggest, to be clear, the customers are multi-billion-dollar international iron ore producers.
Yep.
At the end of the day, that once they take it out of the ground, they need to ship some iron ore to Georgecom across the country in shipping containers, and they need to pelletize it, because that's much more effective than just throwing chunks of rock. We all know, you lose probably 50, 60% of your space.
You're right.
So this is a big opportunity, right, Peter?
Yeah, so the opportunity. So each furnace can have up to 50 diesel burners, okay? And each one of these plants can have up to 10, 12, they have 10, 12 actual furnaces. So we're talking thousands and thousands just in iron ore pelletization. We're not talking about the cement industry and all the other ones that also are interested. So what we've identified in our press releases are 3 clients, and we don't name them. We call them A, B, and C. We just don't name our clients. Some people ask us, what the transparency and things. That's look, it's part of our know-how. That's it. That's part of our know-how.
I wouldn't announce them. There's no
we don't announce it.
Announcing.
Then you can have investors calling them up and asking them questions. No. Forget about it. If you can't fill in the blank with any multi-billion-dollar iron ore pelletizer and conclude something, it doesn't really matter. It's a multi-billion-dollar. Pick one in the world, put it in the blank. It's the same conclusion.
Yeah, again, it isn't Georgecom little iron ore company in Timmins, Ontario, or something like that. We're talking about major international producers.
It isn't. But what we did was and because we have the patent, we estimate that the total marketplace has a potential. It's a potential marketplace of up to $10 billion. I mean, it's huge. We identified 3 clients A, B, and C, and the reason why we did it primarily the first 3, and I think that's material. I think the first one's material. The second one is good, and the third one, because the first one maybe just don't know what they're doing. The second one might be a copycat. But when you have a third one, you get some sense that there seems to be some independence there, and they're coming to they have the same problem, and they might be looking at this as the solution. So what we find is typically happens is that they look at, they want to know. Again, it's a conservative industry, so they want to make sure nothing untoward is happening. So they want a computer simulation of their situation. And once that box is ticked, they order it seems like 1 to 5 torches. Once that's completed, then it goes on to the next. Well, client A, while we were doing the computer simulation, was already negotiating the plasma torch deal, which we sold for 1.8 million, the first one, to client A. Again, we would not announce a letter of intent. We get letters of intent quite often, but in this particular situation, it was important because it was material, because it reflected the continuation of the process of the thinking. Right. 36 torches is a very specific number. So one might conclude that they've already identified the actual furnace they want. So this is very interesting, because as we're moving along and we're getting closer to the conclusion, hopefully the conclusion is they're going to replace all their torches and all their burners. I mean, all their furnaces. I mean, it's material from that aspect.
This sounds like it's for one furnace specifically, right?
That's what I said. That's what I said.
One furnace. Let's do that one furnace, and let's see how it goes. Not that they placed the order, but they've requested a cost estimate. So
what's also nice is the conclusions coming from that torch sale haven't been made public yet. I mean, and it seems like people are moving, identifying furnaces despite not having that data. They're ordering a cost estimate. So, I mean, I think that's amazing news, and a letter of intent, I believe, has a significant value in this specific situation. It doesn't mean it's going to come to fruition, absolutely not, but it shows intent and it shows progress, and that's why I think it's extremely exciting, and extremely important to know that investors know.
And that came out June 3rd, so we never put you to timelines, but has that progressed along well? And how long do you expect the process to take place where you get them a cost estimate?
We'll get the cost estimate out to them. We have questions that we ask them. It goes back and forth. We ask them some more questions because we need to get some form around certain things, and then we provide them with the cost estimate, and that's the natural way of doing things. Where it's going to go after that, we don't know. I mean, it's the first time this is being done for us. You know, it's the first time,
for anyone in the world,
or anyone in the world for that matter. And then you have another complicated issue, which is huge in the sense, okay, it's a double-edged sword. We have governments around the world trying to stimulate their economies by investing in infrastructure and environmental processes. So here you are, let's say, I don't know this for a fact. I'm just saying, listen, you're a multi-billion-dollar company. You're going to do some changes to your equipment. You're going to do some infrastructure changes, and you already got the money to do it. Well, if the government's going to give you a freebie, okay, then you're going to fill out the paperwork and say, okay, listen, we want to do the A, B, and C. Well, that takes time, right? And usually in most areas, where I know you're getting government funding, if you start the project, you can't ask for government funding because it means you don't need it, you know? So you wait, you get the government sign off, or maybe you put in the paperwork. Different places is a different a trigger, which allows you to continue the project without the money in place yet. But you can imagine if there's money out there or support out there, they'd be stupid not to take it. So this is good because it's a tailwind. You know, this government funding and things is a tailwind into people adopting our processes. But you can actually see how it can also in the initial stages delay it. These are all out of our control. I mean, we don't know where things are.
But the part that's in your control is clearly there's an appetite, a very positive appetite for your plasma torch burners at the end of the day, and they're just trying to figure out how to get it there.
The other thing is, if one assumes that there might be a success, okay, it's not a $2 profit margin. You know, it's not like, oh, it really matters if we do it this week or months from now. The impact, if it's successful, and we conclude a deal with any of these clients, it's very material. It's very material. I mean, it's very material to the company. And what do you care if it happens next week, next month, or in 6 months? I mean, this type of materiality or change is very significant.
Peter,
that's just my view.
Well, in the past, you've alluded to in a press release, and not specifically to this, I want to make sure we're clear to everybody, but that the ballpark, selling price per plasma torch is about $3 million.
Okay, so what we said was in the specific industry very early on. Right. We estimated that the net present value to us for each torch sale would be $3 million. Now, that's a very conservative estimate. I'll explain to you why it's conservative. Well, first of all, we anticipated that the torch sale would be around 1.2 million. And the balance would be from service and maintenance. And we cut it off at 5 years. It's ludicrous to cut it off at 5 years. I mean, these are long-term sales. 10, 20 years would be more likely, to be the right number. But we cut it at 5 years. So the $3 million was comprised of two parts. One, the initial torch sale at 1.2, and then we cut off the service and maintenance at 5 years. Well, the first torch sale wasn't at 1.2, it was 1.8. Okay, so there you go. We're already, 3 million is already a conservative number from what's taken place so far. So yes, you're right, George. We did mention $3 million. It was a net present value. It was a very conservative number, and it was in this industry.
All right. Let's move on to the next initiative, which is additive manufacturing powders, better known as 3D printing.
Yeah.
The press release we want to talk about is in reference to that is April 20th. PyroGenesis signs agreement with Tier 1 Global Aerospace company. Again, not George Com, a Tier 1 Global Aerospace company for qualification of additive manufacturing powders, 3D printing powders. Same thing with Dross, same thing with Ore Pelletization. Just a little bit of explanation about PyroGenesis powder abilities, because this isn't 3D this isn't 3D printing powders for me to print off little things at home in my hobby machine. This is serious stuff. Just a little summary there for all the new investors. Then let's go into specifically that press release.
So I have to be careful. So there's a lot of things happening here that are good, interesting takeaways. First of all, as background that we have announced was we have a relationship with a multi-billion-dollar company out of Europe to have a mutually exclusive arrangement where we would supply titanium powders to them, and they would buy exclusively from us for the European additive manufacturing industry. And that was signed several years ago. Yeah, I think so, several years ago. We also announced that we had an interesting relationship with a tier one OEM who was also interested in buying our powders. What we didn't realize when we first got involved with this company out of Europe was that when you sign a deal with an OEM, the production has to be locked down. You can't change it for that particular contract. For that, it's very important. That was very important to us because we had on the drawing board some ideas that would increase the production rate to unheard of levels and lower the cost, the capital costs and the operating costs at the same time. We could have gone with our legacy technology, got the press release and moved on. But this speaks also to how we operate the company. We do it not for the press release. We do it because what we're doing is we decided, so let me back up again. What we decided to do was delay production so that we could incorporate these changes. It was at a time also when money was tight, so it took time. And this is called the next generation process. And what we announced just before that press release was we announced the next gen was finally up and running. Okay, and we tweaked it and we got out some bugs and it's finally running. That is the process that can process wires at a much higher production rate, narrow distribution, and at lower capex and opex. So what we do is actually we take a wire and we have some plasma torches and pinch upon it and converts it to these powders. There's a number of takeaways here. First of all, as I said, we didn't go for the press release a while back and use our legacy. We decided we have to do it right. If we're going to do it and be in the business, it has to be right.
And that's commendable, by the way. I don't know very many small caps that would give up that kind of an opportunity just to do it right.
It's the only way. I mean, it's the only way to do it. I mean, it's if you're going to compete, we're competing against some big people, and there's some very discerning clients out there, and for us, it was the only way to do it. What's interesting, and I don't sound arrogant, but the multi-billion-dollar company and the premium first-tier OEM, they both waited. At the time we were small, we were $20 to $50 million market cap, asking billion-dollar companies to please wait, and they did. And as soon as we got the next gen up and running, the first-tier client signed a contract with us to qualify our powders. They're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not a small thing in the industry. They're looking at adding, I believe, they're looking at obviously, they're looking at qualifying our powders not just for shits and giggles. They're doing it because I suspect they want to add us as a supplier, and it costs them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've heard $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 as being the number. How long it's going to take, I don't know. I mean, that's again, we have never been down this path. They've waited for all this time. You'd think that they might put it into fifth gear, but I don't know what fifth gear is for a company of that size. Okay, so not only have we entered into that contract with them, we've also announced that we're actually starting to supply powders to others who actually again want to qualify our powders. It takes time, but the big news is we're there. We're there with a production line that I believe, production process I believe is the state of the art. OEMs that have come in and looked at our facility and seen what we're putting together have done butt flips. They've said they've never seen anything like it. It's great. So we're there now. Now, is it going to be next week, next month? Absolutely not. It's not going to be next week, next month. It takes time. I think most people, I'm not letting anything out of the bag by telling you that, but it's now moving along with serious end users, which is the news. That's really important.
But by the way, Peter, I think to put it in perspective for new investors, also for new audiences, why Global Aerospace company? Why Global Aerospace company? In other words, what I want to get to is what are they producing potentially with your powders? because it's I want to make sure people understand the gravity of what your powder is being used for.
So on a very basic level, there's two advantages by using 3D printing to make parts, aerospace, but any part. First of all, it's one drop at a time, so there's less wastage. But you can also design things that you can never do before. So let me explain one and the other. Let's say you're going to do a wheel, make a wheel, and you take this block of metal and you chip out the wheel, and there's a lot of waste. Okay, well now you don't have to. You can make the wheel one drop at a time, and it ends up being exactly the same wheel after wheel, and there's no waste. So there's one thing. Now let's say you wanted to. So how it's built on is I think people know 3D printing. It's based one drop at a time. And if you want to put a curve, you put a curve one drop at a time. If you want to have a hole, you build around it. So you have all sorts of kind of holes if you want. And the reason I talk about holes is for cooling. Let's say you want to cool a particular part. Well, it's very difficult to put wormholes into a manufactured product, but it's not when you're doing 3D printing. So now you can design things that you cannot think about designing before with certain cooling capacities, because you couldn't design that type of cooling capacity into the part. So you have two advantages. You have reduced waste and improved designs.
Significantly improved design, because before just metal stamping, put two circles together, create a wheel, and that was all you could basically do at the end of the day. Now you create ventilation for that wheel or that cellular phone part or that jet engine. You can create ventilation shafts.
And again, I'm being very simple, but let's just say a ball, a circle, a sphere is the strongest form. Okay, if you could build that sphere without having inside any metal, it'd be very lightweight. Okay, these type of innovations in design, if you apply them to an aircraft, and let's say the wing or different parts of the aircraft are lightweight, are lighter than they are, then now they can fly, and they don't need that much fuel to get them from point A to point B because they're lighter. So all these things flow into each other, the design, the less waste, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's really cool about our next gen, and this is like a little bit blue sky, is I've said you operate now at higher production rates. The higher the production rate that you can process wire, the faster you can go and make it economical. Well, first of all, our titanium wire, we can make a lot more economical than we could in the past because we're producing at a higher rate per hour and a cheaper OPEX and CAPEX cost. But you can imagine that now you can consider using other wires that were too expensive, too cheap, sorry, to run through the process economically. So you have titanium at one end, which is a very expensive wire, but you have steel at the other end. So we're producing titanium at over 25 kilograms an hour. To get steel, which is very cheap, into a production range that would make it economical as well, you have to do 200 kilograms an hour. So I'm just giving an estimate off the top of my head. So as you move up the chain, you move up the ladder of production, you're introducing more wires that can be considered by 3D printing industry as a wire that can be turned to powder for eventual consideration in different parts. That's really interesting. That's something that we haven't even touched upon in anything, but that's where it's opening things up. So we're actually at the cutting edge of 3D printing, manufacturing, processing of powders, we believe. And I can't put any words in her mouth, but maybe these are the type of things that PyroGenesis is doing that motivated Kathy Wood from ARC Investment to put PyroGenesis in her 3D printing fund, ETF, when we were one of the few Canadian companies she's done this to, and also one of the few that at the time that were not on NASDAQ. We were on OTCQB.
By the way, it's worth mentioning also, you have been nominated Materials Company of the Year 2 years running before Next Gen.
Yeah.
So, you guys were doing some pretty amazing things before Next Gen. I can only imagine what Next Gen, and if these big aerospace companies and OEMs were willing to wait for Next Gen, that speaks volumes just on its own.
Yeah, and we're here now. We're producing. We're running, and we're not a one shop stop. I mean, that's not all we do, and that's interesting because we're playing against some interesting players in the marketplace And they may take their vision, oh, we're going to undercut the price. We can live it out. We got other things happening on the other side that we can, we're a multi-legged tool here. We're here to stay in 3D printing. You want to lower prices? Go ahead, have a ball, do it. We can handle that.
The advantage.
We haven't seen that. We haven't seen that to tell you. We haven't seen that at all. But just in case.
And that's the advantage of being a plasma torch company with global multiple applications at the end of the day.
So I compare us to a multi-legged stool. You cut off one leg, we still have many legs on which to balance the stool.
Let's move on to topic number 4. I don't think a PyroGenesis update would be an update without talking about your relationship with HPQ Silicon.
Oh, that was one where we came out with a press release recently. It was interesting how, I don't know if it went nowhere, but I don't know if people got it.
Well, listen, it's last week. Here's the press release.
Was it just last week?
July 6th.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Well, time flies for you guys, right? There's so much going on.
Yeah.
PyroGenesis announces $4.6 million increase in funding to transform quartz into fumed silica, signs $4 million contract with HPQ Pulver. So that's a mouthful there. Again, for the benefit of new investors, what are you doing there in terms of, there's 2 components. You're transforming quartz into a lot of things in a one-step process. But in this process specifically, it's fumed silica. And when you said earlier, I don't know if people got it, you can't blame people if they don't get it right off the bat, because how many know what fumed silica is, right? So let's talk a little bit about the basics of what that technology and what that product is, and then move into this agreement with HPQ and what.
So we came up with this. Well, fumed silica first is a thickening agent. It's used in paint, cosmetics, toothpaste, and what we're trying to develop is a one-step process to convert quartz into fumed silica, which at least it looks like it's going to be extremely economically beneficial, but will also reduce greenhouse gases by 90%. So again, it hits the, making sustainability sustainable, because we can do it and make it cheaper. And it's a better process than the legacy processes, if it works. And it reduces greenhouse gases. What's interesting is we put together this consortium, government agencies, HPQ, and ourselves. We put in 175K of the 5.3 million. And this is a pool of funds that comes all to us. And I don't think that's what people understood. The pool of funds all come to all to us. And in it, because we're developing some new IP, and who do we want to commercialize it with? The best one would be HPQ. They've been doing the other things with us as well. So we HPQ is paying the lion's share of the 5.3, and includes for IP that we're developing. So it's a $5.3 million funding to develop this process, and it'll be commercialized through HPQ's new entity, which you mentioned before, HPQ Pure. I forget the name. It's just HPQ.
Pulver, yeah.
Thank you, Pulver. Thank you very much.
How big is this market? I mean, look, the first 3 initiatives we've gone over, if there's one common denominator to all 3 of them, is they're global applications, right?
Yeah.
So can we presume that you're not playing small ball, and if you got 3 global applications you're going after, you don't need to play small ball on anything. George can come to you with the greatest idea in the world, but if the market's too small, you're gonna say, "Hey, George, that's great, we could do it, but it's a small market." So can we assume that the fumed silica market is a really big market that you think you can make a dent in together?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it works, it's if it works the way we think it's going to work, it's going to be economical, and it lowers greenhouse gases. So you nailed it. There's no reason why somebody shouldn't use this process. Again, the relationship with HPQ is one where we get a royalty, and then we can convert that royalty into a 50% ownership in the entity. I don't know if he has announced or what the size of the marketplace is. It's huge, but I'll let HPQ talk.
I believe they talked about and I'm reading here, demand for fumed silica is growing 6% compound annual growth rate with a global addressable market of 1.5 billion in 2016, expect to be 2.2 billion next year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
And the reason I say it's up to him because he's the one that's going to be commercializing it. We gave him the rights to do that. So
from the sounds of it, it sounds like you're going to be able to, if everything goes well, you should be able to make a real dent in this because there are two components of this. One is toxic byproducts are being used in current processes.
So we eliminate, we reduce those. Yeah.
And two, you think you can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90%. So is this just a case of, hey guys, if we can actually produce this, we're going to win? Because I don't see how any entity doesn't win when you can eliminate toxic chemicals and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90%.
And you do it cheaper, and you make it sustainable. And you make sustainability sustainable by making it cheaper than what's taking place. That's the goal.
How long do you think it'll take for this fumed silica initiative to find ballpark? Again, ballpark, we're not going to name you down. We're not going to put you on timelines, but
I'll let HPQ to talk about that. Well, one thing is, people tease me a lot about, I give time frames for crying out loud, and I, if I seem to get them wrong. Either they're early, which is not as often as they're late, because I think about how I could do it, right? How fast it should go from, given how I would do it. But then you get other things delaying things, and there's always some delays. But one thing, if you look back at what I've been talking about since day one, pretty much everything I've said has come to fruition, even though it's late. Even though the U.S. Navy was one.
Yeah.
They told us we're going to get an agreement in place. One thing led to another, but we eventually get it. We eventually do it. So that's a nice takeaway. At least I don't tell people things blow up and they disappear. Hopefully, I'm not being challenged, and I knock wood, that we maintain that actually remarkable, in my opinion, track record of actually saying we're going to do things and we do them. That's remarkable. I think if you look back at a number of things we're doing in the industries we're doing them, with the players we say we're doing them, they take place. At the end of the day, we come out with our next gen. At the end of the day, it happens and there's delays. So I've got a stellar track record there. So I don't mind to continue going out and saying what we're doing. However, I'm a little reluctant to start talking about timeframes because it just seems I'm not good at nailing them down that well, am I?
Yeah, and I was can we get a ballpark? In other words, is this something you'll know in? It's not something you're gonna know in 1 month. It's not something you're gonna know in 5 years. Is this a 1 year-ish, project? Is this?
I think Bernard knows better on HPQ to speak to that, and he probably has, and I just don't recall. I mean, I know the numbers and the timeframes we have in our mind. I just don't know what we've committed to tell the marketplace.
But for the benefit of everyone at home, the supporting news here is that you've already transformed Quartz into other products. So it's not as if this is the first time you're trying to transform Quartz into something. PyroGenesis become somewhat of an expert of transforming.
I alluded to this in the past when I said, there's so much happening in that particular field. And what we're doing with the HPQ, there's so much happening that can happen us actually. And we're doing it. We're doing it bit by bit. And the more we're doing in HPQ in and of itself, we're putting multiple legged. We're making it's on itself a multi-legged stool. I mean, if one goes away or has a delay, we're doing quite a few things now with Quartz. It's quite phenomenal. Quite phenomenal what's taking place there. And again, look, if 1, 2, or 3 hit it, it's pretty good. What I like is what we're doing for the environment as well, for the world. I mean, we're reducing waste, we're repurposing waste, we're doing it economically, we're doing it cheaper than what's traditionally out there. That's what I like using PyroGenesis advantages to doing. I don't want to take advantage of government grants, tax credit systems to justify my product. I believe, and in PyroGenesis, we strive to make it work competitively against the legacy technology. That's where we put our gray matter. That's where we put our brains. That's where it should be. I think we're selling the world short and thinking in saying, oh, we need all this government support and tax credits to make it worthwhile. No, we've got the brains in the world to actually figure out how to do it cheaper. Let's do it. Let's put our brains to the right place, make it cheaper so that companies want to take it. And then there's nothing, then we've solved the environmental problem easily. Easily. I mean, if you can find a cheaper way to do it and it lowers greenhouse gases, there's no reason why everybody shouldn't be signing up to us or to anybody else.
That's the golden ticket this decade. That's
what corporation and funding, that's what we should be doing. I find too much relies on the generosity of governments or tax credits and things like that. That's a fictitious environment, in my opinion. I mean, it's a real
you got to be able
environment.
to stand up on your own. So in case
Stand up on your own. Stand up. Make sustainability sustainable, for crying out loud. Because I think people get complacent. They say, "Oh, it's good enough with the government grants and everything else. There'll be a market," and they don't bother thinking the next 5-6 steps to make it cheaper. You know, once some people are at that goal line, they say, "Okay, we got a marketplace. Let's fund the company. Let's raise capital. Let's shove it down people's throats." No, I'm getting a little bit. I'm bordering on political here, so I should be careful. But it's what I believe. PyroGenesis. Well, PyroGenesis is an example. We make it cheaper, and it reduces greenhouse gases or helps the environment. Okay, that's it. That's what we spend our time doing. There's a number of times where we could have stopped early and said, "Guess what? We make it greenhouse gas and it works, but it's more expensive." So.
And last but not least, this one's an easier one, just to keep it, end off a little simpler, which is April 27th, you announced a binding LOI to acquire Air Science Technologies, which, is not a big number, $4.8 million, but it's an important acquisition. So where are you at with the Air Science acquisition?
So for the background, for people that don't know me, that's my background. I used to do mergers and acquisitions in New York for the Fortune 1000 back in the 80s. George, there's this. It's the same pain in the butt to do a $4.8 million as it is to do a $48 million. You have to follow the same process, right? And you have to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure everything's good. I'm over the top. I love this acquisition. The more I get into it, the more I love what they do. So basically, what Air Science does is, on one of the things they do is they repurpose gas that comes off of landfills. So they take the gas that comes out of landfills and damages the environment and repurposes it as a renewable natural gas. So a renewable natural gas is something that can be used in pipelines, gas pipelines. So you can imagine if the gas pipeline is usually taking a gas that's being, into the pipeline, and to get it, they've damaged the environment to get the gas. You can imagine if a portion of that pipeline is used by gas, is part of it is gas that's come off of landfills, and instead of going and damaging the environment, it's put into the gas pipeline. It's used as a gas. There's two benefits. You're not using. You're taking a gas, a landfill gas that's damaging, and you now make it something useful, and it replaces gas that is coming from a source that damages the environment. So it's a double whammy. I like it a lot because right now the environment, at least in North America, is towards governments mandating that pipelines have at least a certain amount of renewable natural gas. So there's a demand for renewable natural gas being legislated, and I just told you we don't make processes that rely on government legislation. 5 seconds.
No, you said credits. In fairness,
or even
government legislation,
or government legislation. Now, that's not to say that I don't embrace it if it's there. So it's there, and that's what the environment is. They're starting to mandate that these pipelines have a certain amount of renewable natural gas, and basically Air Science can repurpose landfill gas into that type of product. Now, there's a huge tidal wave of demand that seems to be coming forward from these government legislations, and it's right up our alley. We want to be greenhouse gas reducers. We're developing into a company, I believe, that should be recognized as one that helps industries reduce greenhouse gas and help the environment. And this is right up our niche. It's right up our niche. And by acquiring Air Science, it put us like 10, 15 years ahead instead of us starting from scratch. And that's a very exciting field to be in right now.
And is the value there that you can take Air Science, put the PyroGenesis muscle behind it, and just supercharge it into much bigger business at the end?
Yeah, of course. So the muscle that you're talking about is essentially our engineering depth, our experience in dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies. We understand the quality they require. We have all this history that we can bring to the fore. Plus, I'm sure as soon as we get into it, we're going to see multiple ways where we can add, and we can bring some. Well, we hope we can bring some intellectual property to it as well, or develop, intellectual property from what we see once we get into it. We have some ideas already. The second aspect, which is really interesting. Well, no, we'll leave that alone for right now. We'll leave that alone for right now. Sorry.
You sure?
It has to do with the impact that their technology has on some of our existing products.
We almost
we'll just leave that. Yes, I'll leave that alone. But,
all right, let's end it off with this on a really cool, happy note.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is going to be a pretty cool day for shareholders with the swag that's been long requested.
Yeah.
You guys have worked on it. You're delivering it, and tomorrow's going to be charity swag kickoff. Tell us, just give us a little sneak preview. But
so we gave a little sneak preview at the annual general meeting. So we developed some swag with the PyroGenesis logo and some themes that I think are kind of fun. I've been kicking around with investors, and the idea behind it is all charitable. It's all charitable. And so what we did at the company, some people got together and dedicated their time to developing this concept of and the designing of it, and it's all high quality product. They're cups, the Yeti cups, hoodies, caps, barbecue sets. They're all of high quality. They're not going to come apart in your washer and dryer. Yeah. But the idea is, what we want to make sure is that it wasn't taking away from investors. In other words, PyroGenesis is not funding it. So basically, not funding it. We're buying the inventory, but they get reimbursed. So all the costs, shipping and costs of buying the product go back to PyroGenesis. But all the profit is going to go to children's charity. Wow. And I thought that was pretty cool from a number of perspectives. You know, we're all busy here. We're working like dogs, but it's amazing how some of our employees have dedicated their time to this, and it's kind of it renews them. You know, they stop doing this and they start doing the swag, and they come back to their job and they're more excited. And there's a sense of pride of having done this and coming out with it. And it's not for profit. It's for profit, but not for us. It's for charity. And we can come to terms with it on the board because we say, okay, we tick a box. It's marketing, right? We got the Pyro logo on it also. We tick that box. But really, it's the charitable aspect that we're able to generate an interest enough that people may want to buy it. And as a result, we help some kids somewhere around the world. So that's
Peter,
really
you should also, if I can, request that you guys take a close look at the George Cholos Ferrari Fund. It's a very noble cause. Yeah. And some of that money can be redirected towards that charitable, cause. It's the George Cholos Ferrari Fund. That would be worth considering at least. George
Cholos, okay, we'll I'm working on something in my head, but so basically what it is, tomorrow is going to be kickoff at the Agoracom Q&A. It's going to be the kickoff. We're going to kick it off. They're going to be standard prices, but there's going to be a certain section where some of the standard prices are upped and people bid on them. And the idea is those are going to be what we call signature. So they're going to be numbered 1 to 10, and there'll be a signature on it. I guess you can ask for no signature if you want, but so there's going to be 4 products. There's going to be the barbecue set, the apron, the Yeti cup, and the Yeti bigger cup. And so 4 items, 10, that's 40 items. And it all goes to charity. That's what's cool. So it's just a kickoff of 4 items, because the other items are clothing and you can't really put a number on them and say it'll fade and you're going to ruin them. So that's we're going to kick that off tomorrow. We'll probably keep it open, the bidding, until like evening hours, and then close it out. And then there and on, it will be normal pricing. Maybe every so often we'll come up with a signature one where we can have make it a little bit more exclusive. The idea there is, I think we're going to charge $10 more minimum price on the signature items, but it all goes to charity.
Yeah,
so it's just to have fun,
and it's a great engagement tool. I think it's just another great way for shareholders of Pyro, who actually we have to credit with spearheading this, because it was during one of our Q&As, I don't know, maybe 8-9 months ago, where someone asked for when are you going to come out with PyroGenesis swag, and that kind of kicked it off. So I think it's a great way to just keep that great relationship going, this fantastic relationship.
So those Yeti cups, I mean, those Yeti things came, I think the suggestion came from some people on Agoracom, and they wanted different things in the barbecue set. So we tried to address it all. We didn't want too much product to begin with, because, we don't know how it's going to go, but we'll see. We'll have fun with it. And it just goes, we tend to have been successful over the past year. And I guess one of the things I say is, as you become more successful in life, don't forget the less fortunate along the way. And this is the one way that the company is trying to demonstrate that philosophy.
Peter, thanks so much for this amazing update. It's, I mean, there's so much going on.
Yeah.
I think it's great to kind of have this reset, talk about all the initiatives, and thanks for giving us that sneak peek on the charity swag initiative tomorrow. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow.
Thanks, George. And again, when you see what's happening in the torches, the 3D printing, the Dross, the acquisition, what's happening at HPQ, there's so much happening. I'm just so busy right now, and I apologize for not having done this earlier, but that's just a little bit busy. And thanks for giving.
I think I speak for everybody when I say no apologies necessary. You've been.
Oh, and George, we didn't mention that there's going to be a Q&A tomorrow. And again, the reason for the Q&A is essentially because our investor base has increased significantly, and we have a lot of new faces with the same type of questions that some of the old timers have had. And some of the old timers may say, "Well, why are we having this Q&A? We know all this stuff." But there's a lot of people. There's over 10,000 new faces in the past year, so it's part of it's almost like a filler. We're going to do the launch. We'll have a few Q&A. We'll see how the launch goes, and then once we're done with the Q&A, we'll be done with it. But the Q&A is basically for the new people. They may ask the same questions like they always do. There may be some new ones, and
they're always valuable. And by the way, you can't call them old timers. What the kids call them today, you got to call them OGs, the original gangster shareholders. You got to call them OGs, not old timers.
Thanks. Right over here.
Thanks, Peter. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. But thanks for doing this today.
Thanks, George. All the best to you, and all the best to everybody else. Thanks a million.
To everybody at home, thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you've been watching it on YouTube, make sure you like it and comment on it. Push that relevance up for PyroGenesis in the YouTube engines. And if you've been listening on podcast, make sure to like it and share it as well. Thanks for joining us here, everybody. Hope you found it as valuable as we did. Have a great day. See you next time. Hey guys, this video is over, but don't forget to help your company by liking it and then leaving a comment below. And then don't forget to help yourself by subscribing to our channel so you don't ever miss another great Agoracom small cap video.